The new Destiny season just launched and we've got a lot of brand new and some recycled guns to play with. Some of these are definitely worth farming this season, while others are more niche and just kind of interesting. First up, we've got Shayura's Wrath 2.0, this time in the Stasis slot. Unending Tempest is a pretty easy one to get since it's just a post-game reward from the Crucible, so definitely keep an eye out for this one. Of course, being a playlist reward, that means that we have 12 perks in each column, so you're potentially going to have to farm a whole lot of these to get the drop that you want. But it is a pretty good gun, at least based on the perks and stats. Remember, the zoom stat no longer matters for damage drop-off, it's just the range stat that determines how far your bullets will reach for maximum damage. And what is that range stat? Well, with just the barrel, magazines, and the masterwork, you can get that range bar up to 88, which is very good. But if you take Fragile Focus in the right column, you can get that bad boy all the way up to 100 while it's active. At this point, you basically have yourself a copy of Shayura's Wrath but in the Stasis slot that doesn't even require playing any trials. Of course, there's also target lock on display here, which is one of the major reasons that the Immortal became such a demon over the last several months. The bonus damage is definitely nice, but I don't know if it's enough to change the breakpoints to contribute to a faster time to kill. I'm going to have to do some testing on that one if I ever get lucky enough with RNG. Regardless, there's still a lot of classic perks to choose from for both PvE and PvP. I think this is one of the better new guns we have this season, even if it's arguably not in the best archetype, so definitely check this one out. We've got our first 140 RPM Strand hand cannon, and this one seems to be generating quite a bit of buzz. If you're a fan of having fantastic in-air accuracy, then there's a particular perk combination to look out for in PvP, and that would be Air Assault with Eye of the Storm. Otherwise, Killing Wind is also really nice for extending that damage range after a kill, and of course Quick Draw is great for that pullout speed, especially if you're pairing it with a sniper rifle and cleaning up some body shots. The new intrinsic perk called Head Rush is also pretty interesting. It advertises some free handling and reload speed just for uncrouching, which also seems to work after a slide. So just by playing normally and sliding around the map, you're going to get a nice bonus to your weapon performance. It might not replace a God-rolled Rose for PvP, but it definitely feels really nice to use. This one surprised me because on paper I didn't really expect to like it this much, but it seems to really be taking the PvP community by storm, and it's an instantly popular pick for the hand cannon lovers out there. And since it's craftable, you can build out any roll that you want. In this way, it's directly competing with the Offstringer, which is another highly rated hand cannon for PvP. It's really nice to finally have a 140 of the Strand variety, which can nicely complement some of those Strand builds. If you want to give Bungie an early $100, then you can get the new exotic fusion rifle, Tessellation. It's the pre-order bonus for the final shape, and it's kind of like a chameleon version of that toaster fusion rifle. This one changes elemental type based on your subclass of choice, and it fires a single projectile instead of a normal fusion bolt spread. When you consume your grenade, it loads an extra powerful projectile that also causes an elemental explosion on the target. Kills with the weapon also give you some grenade energy back, so you can load your grenade pretty often to keep buffing it up. Since it changes elemental type, this also gives you the ability to run 3 strand or 3 stasis weapons at the same time, which is really cool for build crafting. The juiced up shot does some pretty impressive damage in PvE, and it doesn't even require precision hits like an Izanagi's Burden 4-time shot. It doesn't deal all that much splash damage in PvP, but those explosions from a kill can cause a massive amount of damage to nearby targets and get some pretty funny collateral kills. Sir Demetrius was the first one that I saw testing this, and it's pretty funny to see all the different various elemental explosions. On a side note, I really like the little effect that shows all the symbols on the back of the weapon when you consume your grenade. I love these little details on exotic weapons in Destiny. Okay, it's pulse rifle time with the new PSI Hermetic 5. This one has some pretty good perks that you don't see all that often. Mostly, we're looking at Headseeker or Kill Clip together with some really nice consistency perks in the left-hand column. I'm always a fan of Elemental Capacitor, especially for buffing up your handling or stability. With great perks, you can get up to 100 stability with just a few sacrifices. If you're on a controller, you might really appreciate this even more than some extreme range. But for mouse and keyboard, I would still generally go for all the range you can get on a pulse rifle. And then you can get something like Moving Target and Headseeker to get some really nice consistency. For stasis builds, there's also the idea of Headstone, which pairs really nicely with the lethality of a high-impact pulse rifle. Of course, the only real problem with this pulse right now is that you probably can't even get it. Or at least I don't know how to go about getting this thing because it seems to be just a world drop. I've been trying to get this pulse ever since the start of the season with nothing to show for it so far, so good luck. It's time to talk about my favorite type of weapon in Destiny, the sniper rifle. And this new one looks almost exactly like the infamous Revoker with just a beefier scope. The Luna Regolith is a high impact sniper, which usually isn't my favorite archetype, but this one has some really great perks available, so I'm pretty interested to grab a good one. It has a pretty low 43 zoom stat, and it can drop with 2 goated perks on a sniper rifle, Snapshot and Opening Shot. There's not really all that much more to say about the Luna. I used a pretty mediocre roll while capturing footage for the video, and it still felt pretty good to use. I'm really curious to see what a god roll feels like in PvP someday. I think this is a really great option, especially if you like the high impact sniper rifles, but for me, realistically, for sweaty PvP, I'm going to be sticking with the shiny Mercurial Overreach instead. Speaking of snipers, we also have the new LOCUS, which fits into the stasis slot. This is an adaptive frame, which is my favorite archetype, and it also has 40 zoom, which is my favorite amount of zoom for PvP. So I was pretty excited when I saw this thing in the loot pool. It has some pretty solid perks to choose from. Unfortunately, there's no snapshot, which is a major bummer. It's not as good as it was in the old days, but it's still basically a required perk for me on a sniper rifle. So for me to like this thing, I really need to use something like Ophidian Aspects and some targeting mods to make it feel snappy enough to baller with. On the bright side, it has opening shot and the relatively new perk Keep Away, which just makes any long range gun feel good in Destiny. It's also a pretty interesting perk on a sniper rifle since you're naturally going to have it active pretty much all the time whenever you have your sniper rifle out. I still think the Defiance of Yasmin from the King's Fall raid probably has this thing beat, but if you're not much of a raider, it's still a very attractive alternative as long as you have some ways to buff up that handling speed without snapshot. The Heliocentric QSC is a new lightweight sidearm and it has some pretty interesting perks. For PvP, this thing is just a no, at least for me. Like, no way I'm gonna take this thing. Sure, it might just be how bad I am with sidearms, but as far as I'm concerned, it's really not all that good for PvP. There's definitely some better choices. But for PvE, it has some really interesting perk combinations. The one I'm mostly looking at is Heal Clip with Incandescent. This makes for a lot of synergy with solar subclasses and it should help you to get your abilities back pretty fast. If you look at the fragments we can play with, you'll see there's quite a few that combine really nicely with the sidearm. The GOAT of 120s has finally returned to Destiny 2. IGNEOUS Hammer is back in the new season with some new perks that I really want to mention. If you're a newer player and you missed the Beyond Light era, this hand cannon straight up dominated PvP for several months, and even after a nerf to Rampage a while back that took away the ability to 2-tap easily, it still has been an excellent choice. I even ranked this thing S tier in my recent hand cannon tier list. Now it's back in the active loot pool for trials and it has a few new tricks up its sleeve. Most notably, it can now roll the combination of Keep Away and Eye of the Storm. These are both S tier perks on a hand cannon, and to put them on one of the best stat monster hand cannons in the game, it's going to be something truly special. In the left column, we also have Fragile Focus for some bonus range or rapid hit to help with stability. And it also has the new perk Heal Clip if you want to play more of a medic role on your team without needing to run Lumina. In the right column, we have Opening Shot and Moving Target for consistency. So we have a lot of nice perks to be hunting for on this epic hand cannon. Hopefully trials will be tolerable this season. Okay, I want to show you something interesting. Remember how everyone cried about Immortal being OP because it had target lock and rangefinder? Well, Bungie did it again. This time it's on the lightweight archetype of SMGs on the reintroduced Showrunner. But I don't expect it to generate nearly the same level of fuss this time around. Rangefinder isn't buffing our damage drop off anymore, and unfortunately, Showrunner has been badly power crept in terms of its stats. So I really don't think it's all that attractive for PvP anymore compared to some of the better SMGs out there, but hey, it's still kind of a cheeky find in the database. Nightshade is a returning pulse rifle from way back in the Forsaken era. It's returned to us with a bit of a repaint. Now it's of the Strand flavor and it's got some pretty cool perks. Unfortunately for PvP, the archetype isn't really helping us all that much. It's in the lightweight frame, which requires a lot of precision for a pretty mediocre time to kill. Nonetheless, it's a Strand pulse and it's got some pretty good perks, so I want to draw your attention towards it. I'll probably mostly be on the lookout for the combination of Keep Away and Kill Clip or Headseeker. And for PvE, there's nothing wrong with getting another hatchling roll out there, especially on a gun type that works really well at range. Warden's Law is another returning weapon from the Forsaken era of Destiny 2, this time a hand cannon. Like many of the other entries on our list, it's got a slight change in flavor, but this time it's mostly the archetype. You see, the problem with the Warden's Law historically was that it initially shot 2 bullets at basically the exact same time. But from what I've heard from my PvP weapon scientist friends, it seemed like the aim assist often didn't get applied too much to the second bullet. It felt artificially worse than every other hand cannon in the game because there was a chance that your gun would do half body shot damage even if you aim for the head, or even worse, it might miss your target entirely. But now Bungie has repurposed that archetype and they've effectively made it a legendary version of the Crimson exotic hand cannon that fires bursts of 2 instead of 3. It does respectable damage and it can even 2-tap or 4-tap I suppose with the damage boost like Kill Clip. But personally, I'm still not sold on it being all that good. I would rather just take a regular hand cannon that deals all the damage in a single bullet. Sure, the damage output is slightly better than a normal 120, but I still don't like that delay in how it delivers the damage. I think it makes it a little bit harder to peek shot effectively from cover. It's an interesting gun without a doubt, and I imagine it will be better for controller players than mouse and keyboard, but I doubt I'll personally be using it all that much. The Eremite is a new high impact fusion rifle of the solar variety, and it's another one that has a new perk, Heal Clip. This is effectively a version of Kill Clip, which instead of offering bonus damage gives you and your allies a burst of cure. Notice the wording cure. I don't have this particular role to test this yet, but I think it might be able to synergize with the solar subclasses, for example the Ember of Benevolence, which gives you extra ability energy. And of course the healing is a nice touch as well. In the right column there's Reservoir Burst, which offers massive explosions on a fusion kill and a damage increase. Since you have to reload to get that high damage shot back, Reservoir Burst synergizes really nicely with Heal Clip. The gameplay loop should look something like this. Blow up a bunch of enemies and then reload, get your healing and ability energy back from Ember of Benevolence and then repeat. There's also a few other interesting perks in the right column that you might want to think about, but I don't think that they make the Eremite all that unique, so I might be missing something. So future rifle lovers out there, let me know in the comments. Deadpan Delivery is another recycled weapon, this time an aggressive shotgun added in Season of the Witch, but it's got a bit of a sneaky trick up its sleeve. It's got Slick Draw, which is the modernized version of Quick Draw. This gives you 100 handling at all times, and we know how broken that can be on aggressive frame shotguns, but in return it takes away a bunch of aim assist. Now for a shotgun, I don't know how harshly that penalty will actually be felt. It fires a spread of bullets in a consistent pattern, and only the middle pellet is actually affected by aim assist, so it could be that sacrificing aim assist is not going to be felt all that much on a shotgun. Unfortunately, I don't have this one to confirm it yet, and my footage is from the collections version, which is much worse, but it's definitely something worth testing because I think we might have a new Mindbenders on our hands if this turns out to work. If we know anything about Destiny history, great handling on heavy hitting shotguns that kill from really far away is always something to fear in PvP. Let me know what weapons you're enjoying most this season, and up next check out my hand cannon tier list. It's linked on screen and in the description.